Sorry. I'd like to open the meeting for the Nevada Commission for Reconstruction of the V&T Railroad. It's Thursday, 29 August at 1 p.m. Would everybody rise for action? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Denny Dotson,
Here.
Nick Morano should be here, so he may show up during the meeting. Stan Jones,
Present.
Marshall McBride,
Here.
Mike Santos is absent. He did come and meet with me in the office. He is out of town.
Thank you. We have a quorum, right?
We have a quorum, Chairman.
Number 2, for possible action, approval of the agenda. I want to move item number 9 to number 6, if there's no problem. Can I have a motion, please?
Go ahead. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as recommended.
Motion, second.
I'll second the motion.
Any public comment? All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 3, public comment for non-agenda items. Anybody have any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4. For possible action, approval of meeting minutes for 25 July 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I move the minutes be approved.
And I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All those approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Number 5, for discussion only, financial report.
Thank you. Commissioners, we will have a balance sheet or a year end for fiscal year 2019 as per Hugh Gallagher next month. He is not here today because he chose to stay and still work on in order to work on our financials a little longer. We've been working with Hugh diligently for the past 2 weeks, and we're getting very, very close. The Tyler system did kind of throw a wrench into our progress, but we're very close. Right now, an estimate is over 100,000 in the black, but you will have a full report from Hugh at our September board meeting. As far as fiscal year 2020, we did indeed, you'll see, I passed out a report to all of you. To date, our revenue has been $341,691.66. That is for July and August, what we're at the point in time that we did the report, which was August 28th. So there will be some additional revenue and possibly expenses. Expenses, $261,511. So right now we are sitting at $80,000 in the black. I did want to point your direction to some of the larger items. And the largest item being outside of the train service invoices is our marketing. But this was the time that we spend a lot of money, invest a lot of money into our marketing, and that's at the beginning of the train season. We had them hold their invoices until 2020, when a lot of these items actually related to the special events or the train events that they were working on. So overall, we're doing pretty good to come out of July and August still in the black. Last year, we didn't have the same scenario. So I do predict, though, that we will not have these large expenses, especially in the marketing, that we did now. And we also paid our annual insurance bill of $10,500. So that's our year-to-date for 2020.
Questions, any comments?
No, not for me.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, for the next item, we'll go to number 9, discussion marketing. Molly?
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Molly Ellery with our Jensen Partners. So the documents you have in front of you, you should have 3. We have an overview. It's just the marketing update that I provide every meeting. I did not provide our creative in the PowerPoint slides, so you have a printout of the creative we've done for the last month and then our Engine 18 plan. So just looking at the marketing update, going over a couple of things, what we are seeing, since we do have measurable numbers from last year, is that month over month and period over period, and now at this point year over year, we are seeing substantial increases of 18% or more in impressions, click-through rates, and I think those are the 2 that we're seeing those numbers over. One of the things we are seeing in our display ads specifically, we saw a 34% improvement from the previous period in the number of people that are clicking on those ads. So we are gaining substantial traction and we're reaching a much larger demographic. As we go through, one of the things we wanted to mention last weekend, we did have Reno Moms Blog ride with us. One of the things we've been focusing on is working with some more of our local bloggers and influencers just to help spread the word about us locally and create the distinctions between us and other entities that are running similar operations, such as, the Railroad Museum and Mr. Gray's operation as well. They posted over 20 times for us and garnered over 32,000 impressions with their posts, and they did a full day with us on the train and then in Virginia City as well. Moving into our Toast of the Canyon, we are seeing all of the impressions and clicks for display and social continue to go up, and we are modifying those ads now because we do have new assets and we have new additions to the trains such as beer or spirits. So as we get the updates for when those trains are, we modify those ads and we see those ad numbers raise substantially. For the 150th, we did send out a press release about that and we got picked up in 4 of our outlets. We also did a Facebook Live day of, which was viewed over 500 times and reached over 1,500 people. So that was a great piece of free marketing. Thank you, Chairman Dotson, for bringing that back to our attention. We're going to make sure we're integrating those types of tactics more. And then, of course, our big news for the Engine 18, we ran a social media promotion announcing that the engine was going to be coming back and asking our followers if they could rename a train, what would they name it? And on Facebook, we reached over 6,000. We had engagement from over 1,000, and we had over 528 reactions, comments, and shares, which is to date the largest impact that we've seen on social media for something that we've done. So the public is very excited about this train coming back. We had very similar numbers comparably on Instagram as well. And we provided a list to the general manager of all of those name recommendations and all of the individuals who submitted. We all came up with an idea to do a contest, and we're going to pick somebody to ride in the engine on the first return to Virginia City. So people are very excited about this. And then we wanted to provide a little look ahead for the remainder of the year since we are on the back end of things. So for the rest of the 150th and for the Engine 18, we are combining messaging for those 2 things because we didn't until recently have a for sure return date on the Engine 18, but we didn't want to stall advertising for that or the 150th. So we're combining those 2, and so far it seems to be performing quite well. We are going to do a special debut event for the 18 when it does return. One of the things we discussed internally was holding a large VIP event at the start of next season so that we kick off next season with a bang and have a lot of traction. But when the train does come back on the tracks in September, we want to invite some of our local community dignitaries, Dave Peterson from the CTA, current and former board members, et cetera, to join us for that event. We're also going to unveil the new name for the engine at that time. And actually, we were talking to media today, and they're incredibly excited. And then for Polar Express, we did allocate a larger budget this year than last year because we were all under the misconception last year we sold out. And we are getting ahead of that this year to make sure that we don't have that issue. So we will have radio, print, and digital advertising running. And we also are kicking around the ideas of in-studio demonstrations where we have our actors go in and show on live TV what it could look like, as well as inviting media to either auditions or some of the practices that we have and forcing them to be a part of it and capturing that on video as well, and to help increase ticket sales. I won't go through it, but as you can see, just very briefly, in some of our creative, you should have color copies, which is nice. But if you look specifically at the 150th and the Toast of the Canyon E-Blast, those are our newer assets. So the Toast of the Canyon E-Blast specifically has our brand new photos that we just took. Those are completed. I apologize, my computer is in the shop, so I couldn't provide those, but they are gorgeous. We are also in the process of doing the final cuts on our video that we can use for social media and TV, and updating our website with those new assets as well, which it's a time-consuming process, but it is happening. The Engine 18 plan is in front of you. It was just our recommendations for different things aside from basic press releases, media invitations, and having community leaders attend, and a look forward at potential events we could do next year. I know that was a lot of information, but if you gentlemen have any questions or ideas, suggestions, I am open. Thank you.
Stan, can I say a couple things before the commission makes their comments? As far as the Polar Express misconception of being sold out, that's the general public's misconception, not ours internally. So we were ahead of it this year, making sure that that's part of our message, that the Polar Express is not an event that you have to buy your tickets by July or you don't get them. So we're focused on that, and it's working. Molly, I know you have to take off, but we're going to be discussing the return of the 18 a little later in this meeting, and I'll get you an update on that.
Perfect, thank you.
And then as far as the names, I do have the list here. And what we spoke about was having the commissioners, since we do have to keep it a secret in order to unveil it, you all will get the list, and we'll ask you to pick the top 3, your choice. And then you will just email me separately what your choices are. And then I'll let everyone know which 3 rose to the top, and then you can make your final decision.
So that was the end of my report, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do you have any questions?
I don't know. Thank you for your report, Molly. Nice job.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple, Molly.
Yes, sir.
On the first part of your recap there, the spending per click, you showed
Yes.
34%. That's cool. What's driving that? Is that Polar Express tickets, or is that regular season
So
Toast?
from the data that I'm receiving, it's very much so from the steam train.
Okay.
Just the vintage steam train and the 150th. We did notice that, much as we expected, as soon as some of those new assets were added, we start to see clicks going up because people think it's a new picture, it's a new event.
Right.
So those are the 2 things that we're seeing an increase year over year on.
Cool. And then what are you seeing for secondary clicks? Are we seeing anything for, if we are selling the steam and going to a Polar Express, or maybe going to a hotel in Carson City, or an attraction up in Virginia City? Anything like that?
So from my understanding, and I will double check this, so I'm not providing false information, but it is going to Virginia City events. We're seeing lots of things around the special events in Virginia City, as well as just when we have things to do in the area. That's one of our, our Google AdWords things to do in
right.
Virginia City. We're seeing traction towards those things.
Cool. No, looks like it's good. So that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any public comment? Good report, Molly. Thank you.
And thank you for allowing me to duck out early.
Sure.
I greatly appreciate it.
Item number 6, for discussion and possible action, approve a letter to the Nevada Commission on Specialty Plates to change the direction of funds for the V&T Railroad specialty plate revenues to go directly to the Commissioner's Wells Fargo account instead of Story County. Elaine, do you want to explain that?
Sure. So this is identical to the letter with the exception of where we would like the funds redirected. Last year, when Story County took over through an interlocal agreement, the finances, we were purging our old bank accounts, merging them, and then we were without a bank account. So the checks we asked from the funds for the V&T plate to go to Story County rather than sit and compile, or pile up each month. And so, but now we are working from our own account. Checks will be written from our own account. We've had an account for a few months now. And so it's now time just to have them directed to the V&T Railway Commission's account.
Just for the record, how much is that amount? How much was that amount this year?
This year, it was $25,000 and some odd dollars.
Good. Any comments?
No concerns. I think my question might be for Mr. Rode. Didn't the funds originally, weren't they handled by the Carson City treasurer at one time? They were the holding account at one time, right? So, yeah, I don't have a problem with this, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm also comfortable with this. It's just more or less housekeeping. And with that, I'll approve a letter for the Nevada Commission on Specialty Plates to change the direction of the funds for the V&T Railway specialty plate revenues to go directly to the Commission's Wells Fargo account instead of Story County.
Thank you.
I'll second your motion.
Motion made and second. Is there discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman, can I just make a comment, just for the record? When we did attend the meeting in order to make this change, I don't know Rocky's last name off the top of my head, but he's in charge of this particular action, and he asked us to please start directing the money to a V&T account because it muddies their records when it's going to one entity when it should be going to another. So it was actually Rocky's recommendation last year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 7, for discussion only. Progress report on the number 18 steam engine. Tom?
Hello, my name's Tom Gray with the Virginia and Truckee Railroad. And real quick, I just got this via magazine, and it has on the road, and it says terrific train rides. And Bill Kohler, engineer, wrote, I'll tell you what he wrote. The Virginia and Truckee Railroad can take you from Nevada's state capital, Carson City, to Virginia City, site of the famous Comstock Silver Strike, climbing 1,000 feet along the way. Outside, you'll see many old mines, and if you're lucky, wild Mustangs. Phil Kohler. So that's a pretty nice little plug for us. Bad news on the 18, we took it up to pressure, 165 pounds last night, but the dry pipe let go on the front flue sheet, so I have to take it back apart and see what's wrong with it, and then we'll steam it back up again. So I'm going to have to delay, or I'm uncertain about when it'll be back. So that was kind of disheartening, but that's the way it is. So I had Marshall and Denny, before they came to the meeting, take a quick look at it. Just it's still pretty hot, so it's cooling off. So tomorrow we'll take part of it apart, see what we got. And then the one contractor, I can get him back next week, and one of his guys to help out and just keep on it. So I'll know more in about a week, but we need to get it up to full pressure.
Just keep in touch with us.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want you to, back in, when was it, 77? Probably 1978, we had I did a thing for my dad about getting the 29 ready, and I I think it was Marilyn Newton back at the time, put a color picture in the Reno Gazette full page, on the front page, about the return of the 29. And I didn't quite make it that day, so I've been here before.
Any questions? Any public comment?
I mean, we're dealing with unforeseen circumstances, so we just don't want to go full board ahead with the advertising campaign for the return until we have a more definitive date on when Tom can make it operational, so.
So today was gonna, yesterday, we did a 70-pound steam, but we need to do these thermal cycles on this boiler because it stretches and contracts, and we just need to get a few more of those done and figure out what's going on. But we got up to 70 pounds pressure, and we did all the hydrostatic tests. We do that cold, but and we had everything going pretty good. So today we're going to take it up to 185 and set the safety valves and have the federal guys come in and look at it. But I had to cancel that, so we'll get it.
Thank you, Tom. Keep us informed, please.
I will.
Yep, thanks, Tom.
The second part of this is recommendation for interim agreement with the VT Railroad for use of the engine. Mike, do you want to discuss that?
We have the existing agreement, which you all know is expired. There's a lot of language in the existing agreement that needs to be changed. I think we should probably have an interim agreement for the balance of the season for however long Tom is able to operate the 18. And then I think we ought to sit down with Tom and Brian Russell and the chairman to work out the terms of a new agreement for next year and years beyond for the 18. I've gone through this and have picked out a lot of parts of this agreement that just don't apply anymore. And so what I'd like to do is to establish a meeting with the chairman and Tom and Ryan at a convenient time. I was given Stan's available dates of the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And with the concurrence of the commission, I will try to set up a meeting with the four of us and perhaps Elaine too, if she wants to be along,
I would like to have Elaine there, yes.
to be able to go through this and come up with a different agreement. There's language in here, for example, and I don't know if he's even still around, but we had agreed in this agreement that Chris DeWitt would be the arbitrator, and I don't know if he's around still or not. So there are just a lot of little things that I think we need to update, and I think that we need to get a good agreement for next year and maybe take parts of this for an interim agreement and go from there for the rest of this year.
Well, I certainly agree. I've just given a quick glance at the contract, and there's a lot of things that I don't really care for or don't understand. But I would like to have an interim agreement, but I think we ought to carry it through to, May of next year? That way, this contract covers during the off-season while we're negotiating the new contract. Is that a problem?
I don't disagree with that. We do have a provision that we all agreed on when we did the first lease agreement that Tom would store the 18 indoors, and I think that's probably pretty important for the winter.
Right.
But he'd know more about that than I, but it seems to me it should be indoors.
Yeah, that's not even something to argue about. That's going to happen any rate. It's a valuable machine, but I think we should have a meeting definitely with Ryan and you, whether it's interim or long-term or.
You, Stan's available time is the 10th, 11th, or 12th. Can you make it on one of those days?
see what Ryan can do, you bet.
Yeah, after this meeting, I was gonna communicate with him. He and I have, Ryan Russell, wrote me an email, I believe it was earlier this week, and suggested a meeting, and said he'd be happy to host it at his office, and I think that's a good idea. It's pretty centrally located for everybody. And, I'll go ahead and get that set up for one of those 3 days. And with the concurrence of the commission, I think the chairman ought to be involved in that discussion.
Any comments from you guys?
No, I think you're on the right track.
Well, then, let's see. So we'll do an interim agreement. What do you think on the date? Do you want to do it at the end of the year, or do you want to do it till next May? What do you think, Elaine?
Well, I'd say shoot for April 30th of next year.
Okay.
And we may be able to get the new agreement worked out well before that time, in which case, the interim agreement would be superseded by the final
Right.
agreement that we can come up with.
If we don't get it worked out, though, then we have a problem, so we need to get on, we need to get on it.
Elaine?
Yes, I agreed with the April 30th date. It makes sense, just mainly because of storage, but then, Tom's indicated he didn't have a problem, so that's all good.
And we'll plan something right after the first year to get working on the long-term agreement.
Or you can do
Well,
that now, too.
Actually, Stan, I think we ought to start sooner than that, to get a new agreement in
That's fine.
place.
That's fine.
It's gonna take a few weeks to work it out, I'm sure.
All right.
In the meantime, I'll be working on the 18, so.
I'm listening to you, Mike. You're the guy that's.
Okay. I will contact Ryan and, set up a meeting and let everybody know when that's gonna be, even though only Stan from the commission will participate. Or Stan and Lane from the commission.
Okay, thank you. Number 8, for discussion only, update on the proposed rail bike operation.
So in your board packet, you had have a report by Jim Adamski. Jim is from the skunk train operations in Fort Bragg. When we went to Fort Bragg, he offered to come to Virginia City and check out the Canyon Rail to see if it was a good location for the rail bikes and give us recommendation. He did come for a couple of days, and we took him up and down the various track, and he was very impressed with how solid, basically new, our track was and the caliber. He did indicate, though, that because of the grade of the canyon, that it would take an articulated type of a bike. He also, we spoke about the motor, and it would need a more powerful motor than one that they're currently using in Fort Bragg, being that it's, Fort Bragg is basically, very, very slight decline. And then, but their rail is also much older. They're, again, very impressed with what we had to offer. Jim and I have been speaking and going back and forth. And Skunk Train themselves are going to be ordering wheels and then building their own rail bikes. And since they were going to be and have a plan to build their own, they have offered to build ours. And because there's one specific item that will make or break our bikes, and that is that our wheels need to have a more solid center on them in order to not derail. And they have the same situation even at Fort Bragg. And so they're ordering custom wheels. It's cheaper if we order wheels at the same time. They also been working with the same gentleman that we were working with in Leadville, Colorado. According to Jim, in our last conversation, that gentleman's been hit and miss. So he's not as a reliable source as we had hoped, but they're pretty much in the same boat as we are. And there are some other Western rail bike operations that are starting up. And so the thought is that possibly we could work together and work on the issues or the parts and order those in bulk. But we ourselves, to build our own bikes, we would be starting as people that have really not operated them with all that detail, where we could be working with Fort Bragg's operation to have them build ours. So those were our conversations back and forth. And then as of August 22nd, I spoke to Robert Panoli, and they are interested in building the rail bikes, and he will bring a rail bike to Carson City at the latter part of September to test the canyon with a rail bike. Of course, Jim could not bring a bike with him when he came because they're not his. But they do belong to the skunk train, and therefore Robert will bring a bike up and test it to see exactly what it is that we here in Carson City would need for the canyon. So that's pretty much a report for this month.
Well, one interesting thing, the rail bikes are making more than the skunk train is now. Greater revenue. Which I was kind of surprised, I guess. They did say the skunk train is not running the full run because they've got a tunnel collapse, so they're running on either direction, I guess. But he did say that the rail bikes are by far exceeding the gross revenue than the skunk train. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, Jack Greenhalgh. I have a question about liability insurance on that. Because that's pretty dangerous. And I was just wondering,
So we did look into that. We go through Pool Pack for our insurance, of course. They view them as motor cars. And so as far as the FRA, they're fine with it. The insurance, the liability, we've spoke with the Pool Pack. They're supposed to be getting back to us. But there is a waiver that we were putting together to present to them before they can really.
the most waivers aren't good.
We'll do the best we can, Jack. The most important thing is to be sure the carrier is on board with us in terms of ensuring the risk.
Because they are dangerous. I mean, anything around a railroad, steel on steel, I mean, I can just see somebody getting on there and getting their leg broken or neck or something.
Any other comments?
The only comment I have, Mr. Chairman, is you say that the rail bike is making more money than the skunk train is, but we don't really have what the numbers are, so we don't know.
No, that was just a comment.
I know, because
Yeah.
we know that it's difficult to make money running trains anyway from
Exactly.
sitting on this board. So that would be a question, and I'd have for Elaine, is in your conversation with people who've operated these, do they give you any indication on what type of profit margin they have? Because you've done your analysis, you gave us what it would budget out to in the last meeting on, revenue to expenses and how we could potentially, of course, it's always the potential, but we could potentially make, but do we have any indication on how much money that these other operators are making?
I did not actually ask them specifically for their financials, net gain or net loss, but I know that the Boulder City train in Vegas, or they call it their Vegas train, They leased their track, and they're more interested in now owning their bikes. So it was the difference, there was money to be made. I can get that for the next board meeting, whomever's willing to offer that information.
It's just a thought. I mean, we're very seasonal here, where Southern Nevada they're a year-round operation in Southern Nevada.
No, year-round, it's the Vegas area, so it gets hot, very hot. So they run theirs January through April. And our very, very first conversation about rail bikes, we were going to try to get the same setup to come here and operate during our peak season weather-wise. And because since we weren't running trains on the canyon and it was an underutilized track, and we were in those conversations, but we decided to first, leasing the track does not benefit the commission as much as would the running their own operation. And I made that clear as well with Robert at Skunk Train, that we would be looking at running our own operation rather than having them here to run an operation and lease our track.
Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, Elaine, a couple of things for me. Thank you for this report, that's Jim Adamski. This is neat to look at and see it from an outside perspective. I like his approach. I think it's pretty conservative, but he raises some concerns in here too, that traditional rail bikes will probably not work with what we have. Would lean more towards a two-seater. But as you get towards the back here, I'll also read just real quickly here some things about the infrastructure needs, which some things we really didn't take into consideration that we would need. So there's just some good things that I never thought of, having some more space, some dedicated area. But the one thing that I've noticed is missing, and Jack actually kind of touched base on it, is an overall safety plan. I think that's a pretty big concern, and with a moving train and bikes and how that interacts, and that whole thing would have to be certainly reviewed and to probably eliminate our liability concerns.
You're correct. So I did in italic, I did write, he had hit the concerns and then I answered what they would be. We discussed that while he was here visiting, but we do have the storage container, and we do have some additional siting that we could, where we could park the bikes. We have the containers to store them. We have a container or a back storage room to store the batteries. So some of these questions were answered and answered pretty easily. Now, the interaction between the train and the rail bikes would use the canyon. We would not have a train on the canyon. We could actually operate using a motor car. In Southern Nevada, their passengers pedal down one direction, they park, and then a diesel train follows them down. They have more issue with that. In fact, that was brought up by the FRA, that was something they weren't really easy with, they weren't comfortable with. But a motor car, it could very well be the answer. And then having motors on our bikes, but not using like the electric bike motors that Skunk Train's currently using. There are other options. I've been talking with Gabe and his team about gas-powered motors. And so that's there are options, and there's plenty of examples. And we still have time to go out and get some of those examples. We even talked about a prototype bike, maybe having a prototype bike built that would fit our specifications, and trying it and going and using that for tests throughout the season or throughout the next few months, so that we could kind of get an idea of what our challenges might be.
Speaking of safety, one of the things that this gentleman said was they have a guide in front and in the rear of every ride. And that, he says, we control the speed. There's no grab-assing, there's no nonsense. You ride the bicycle, and that's it. So they're very tuned in on the safety aspect of it. Any other comments? Thank you, Elaine.
Stan, I have a question.
Yeah.
He makes a point in here of saying that he can't get wheels. Where are they gonna come from?
So that was the situation with the gentleman from Leadville, was that the wheels were being produced in Leadville by this individual company. So the individual who originally owned the business and sold it to the other, I'm not going to use names, the next owner, he is offered to work with Skunk Train to build their wheels. So, and start a new business. And that was the problem, is trying to get the wheels. It had more to do with the owner than the product itself, or trying to, this is bad, reinvent the wheel. They had the gentleman that actually started. I don't have the name on the top of my head, but that was a conversation that on the 22nd of August that we had. So now it's not a problem after, this report was originally written. So good question.
Item number 10, Manager's Report.
So I gave you the list of the names, and does anybody have any questions about how we're going to work the renaming? We are going to keep it a secret. So again, the board is going to select the name for the engine.
So again, I'm not very good with directions sometimes. So line me out. You take these list and you'd like us to pick 3 and then email them separately back to you. Okay, I can do that.
Okay. And that's as easy as it is. And then if one of them doesn't just shoot right to the top, we'll let you know how they came in, and then I'll send you back, the top names, the top 3 names out of all of 5 of you. And then we might have to run it through you once more to see what the new name would be. Also, the Toast of the Canyon train, I did want to bring that up. We have Tina Claypack, and Tina is now our special events coordinator. She's stepped back a little bit from the guest services portion of our trains. She has to be home with her sons on the weekends, and now that her husband is out of the country. So therefore, you might be wondering who this beautiful gal is. And Angela, how do I say your last name?
Hoker.
Hoker? Hoker? Angela Hoker, or we call her Angie, that's what she goes by. And she is now doing guest services for us, and you will see her also here at our board meetings. And so far, you've been working for us for a couple of weeks, maybe a little more?
A little more. Yeah.
Little more.
Yeah.
She's also answering our phones. She does a fabulous job. She's catching on very, very quickly. And so Angie is, again, taking up some of the slack that Tina and Tiffany have had to step back just a little to take care of family things. And it worked out beautifully. We're very lucky to find Angie.
Thank you.
But now going back to our beer and wine trains, it's got to be beer and wine. We tested it. We did one train that was beer and wine. 145 tickets sold. We had to use 3 cars in order to make room to be able to serve them and move about the train. And so that being our new realization, we'll start working at a spirits train and continue on this path. Our spirits and wine train, we did have a brewery. It was Shoe Tree Brewery came on board, and they served their beer. It's very popular. Reds has really come to the table, and they are co-sponsoring some of our events as well. We also have a label, a wine now that will carry our label as a souvenir, and at no cost to us, but we will be serving their wine at cost. And this is the new logo. It's pretty basic, but it's clean, it's nice. And this will start here at our next Toast of the Canyon train, which is September 14th. And I am sure that it's going to be very, very popular, but we haven't really married the beer 100% into our trains, and we're rethinking that because, looking at the numbers, beer and wine train, 145 tickets. She actually, when you see her net on her report, the net is in brackets. That is not a loss. She actually had a $1,048 or $49 net. And then wine, straight wine, we sold 43 tickets. So it looks like we're going to have to combine the two beverages or on our trains. This is what our public is asking for. And then finally, we're ending the Groupon campaign, but I will tell you that it was a huge success, and we sold $15,000 in tickets. We had people that rode the train that had never ridden the train before. Groupon does have a following, and as far as a marketing technique and the way that they marketed us, it was very well done, and I was not disappointed with the results whatsoever. Right now, we're just running a Groupon for the 150th to keep our Fridays numbers up. And again, it's working. We did see, if people don't show up after purchasing the Groupon, it's automatically redeemed, so we still get their money. It turned out to be, a great marketing tool in addition to getting new people to ride the train and getting the word out there. That's it as far as our trains. And now lastly, we have the opportunity, and I did speak, this is Joel Dunn, I've been working through him. And as you may know, Joel does metalwork. So we contacted Joel. I spoke with Stan about it, contacted Joel, and he gave us some really good advice. And it looks like we can get a metal cutout of a steam engine and put it up on the hill. So not only as general marketing, you see a steam engine, you know what that's about, but it also will help identify the turn on to Flint Drive so that you can get to Eastgate to get to us. Angie now knows. Yeah, it's a problem. And direction and location and where we're located has always been one of our problems. But the nicest surprise is the cost. I brought this quote with me today. And for the metal cutout itself, it would be $2,600.
And what's the size?
It is a 10 by 20. It's a pretty large sign. Their fabrication fee is only $195. That was good. And I checked with the owner again of the property where we'll be placing the metal cutout, and he did say it's fine with him as long as the city's okay with it. It's not on city property, it's not on NDOT property, it's on private property, and it is where the old double wides were located that they're removing. There's an ideal location right there on Flint Drive. It's up on a hill, visible both directions on Highway 50. And then we can, it was even recommended, not just by Joel, but by PDM, that RMAC, we could get them to use a bucket to lift. They'll deliver the metal cutout if we can get somebody to do the posts, the mounting, and the lifting of the metal. You see that there were two quotes here. And the first one was of a different type of steel. Joel recommended us to go ahead and go with the Corton brand, mainly because of the way it rusts. It is the same brand and metal that's used along the interstate, the train on the interstate. So normally I can approve or do things that are $5,000 and under, but I am going to I will tell you, I don't have yet a bid for the placement of the metal cutout. I've yet to talk with RMAC to make sure this can be done. I first wanted to see exactly how expensive the cutout was going to be and that we could get it. And these folks are out of Sparks, and they said, no problem.
Any comments?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it looks like a pretty fair price for sign. Is there an opportunity to get an artist rendering of what this is going to look like?
Well, what I gave to them, it was our standard cutout that we use. I can send it to you.
Okay,
So it's a silhouette of a steam train. We use it on a lot of our advertising and things that we do on our signage. So it's, at this point, it's not as fancy as the one on the interstate, but also it's more for a symbol than a landmark.
my concern is making sure that it's large enough, because when you're traveling at 55 miles an hour, you've only got about 2.5 to 3 seconds to look at anything. So,
Good idea.
No, I don't have any comment. As this is not agendized, we're just looking, just for really discussion here, but would this fall under this current year's budget under like a marketing item? Or,
No, I'll have to figure out where it would come from. We did not plan this, but we do see that it's a necessary landmark to use. We went nowhere. Last year, we spoke a lot about our signage and our directional problem. We've put up banners with train silhouette. That's worked. We put up directional signs. The most we could get from NDOT and the city was Eastgate Depot on a small sign. And Stan and I worked on that for a couple of months, but we had to compromise with what they could give us, and it's still not effective enough. So it's an issue that we needed to address this year.
So Elaine, we're looking at the second bid of $24.70. Is that the one you're looking at?
Yes,
And that includes delivery?
includes delivery.
Okay. Does that conclude your report? Any public comment? Okay. No engineers report today, so we'll go to number 12, attorney's report. Mike?
Not much to report. I've already spoken about the lease, which was the major work item outside of the usual routine agenda review and proofreading the minutes. It's been pretty quiet, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Any public comment on this? Thank you. Our next meeting is 26 September 2019, this room, 1 o'clock. Any commissioners' comments? Denny?
no, I don't have anything. I think I'm good. I know the marketing meetings are coming along pretty well.
You've been on vacation.
Well, yes, I should have been probably a little bit longer, but I couldn't stay away from you guys, so I had to come back and, yeah, you believe that? I probably not. But no, I think the marketing meeting's been good. There's been good discussion, some good ideas and direction, and look forward to the camel train coming up early. And as I mentioned, we're going to make sure folks know to buy their tickets, make sure they have their camel race tickets before they get on that train, because we will be sold out for that show. It is getting close. So ticket sales are doing great for camel races.
Good.
That's all I got.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I have is the effort on the marketing team of having their passengers wear these bright yellow stickers that they're a passenger on the train. Now you can tell who is actually riding the train, and it's very noticeable, and I think it's a good tool, especially for merchants in Virginia City that can tell other customers walking in the store that they're actually being brought up on the train. So it's just one more little tidbit of information that I see it in my business as well, so. And people like it if you go ahead and engage in conversation with them and ask them how their train ride was and if they saw any horses on the way. And it's a very positive feedback from the rider. So I'm glad you put this in place. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a lot of things going. I'm very happy with what we've accomplished this year. I think our board needs to be commended for that. We've got a lot of long ways to go too. I'm optimistic we're going in the right direction, and I'm optimistic that we're going to see have a very successful year next year. We did a lot of improvements this year, spent a lot of money that was non-railroad related, but it was very necessary. And thanks to Elaine for your leadership, and we got it done. So, any other public comment on this? With that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I will second that motion.
So moved.